Hello and welcome to this lesson on the imperfect tense. Well, we've already seen the past tense, and this is one of the past tenses. We've already looked at the preterite tense, which we talked about being a completed action, or with a time frame, a very fixed time frame. And the imperfect tense is different to that. So let's have a look at some of the uses. So, first one is absolutely crucial. If we're looking to describe something in the past, we're going to use the imperfect tense. If you think about it, describing the hotel, describing somebody who we met in the past, always going to use the imperfect tense. We can use it to say what things used to be like. Okay, so we might say I used to live somewhere, I used to be, I used to have, when I was younger. So it's a little bit looser than the finished actions, and also we can use it to say what we were doing. Okay, so I was doing this when something else happened. Okay, so we've got our three uses then. So this is the formation of the Ar verbs. So we're going to use estar as our verb to be, very important verb. So first of all we need to take off the Ar to get our stem. So we've got est now rather than estar, and we've got our little stems here and our stems here, and then we need to add the persons. So remember, the person of the verb, I, you, he and she for the singular ones, and then we, you plural, and they for the plurals. Next up then, we need to add some endings. And these endings are really different, but also have a familiarity about them that hopefully make it easy to learn. So the first one then is aba. It does become one word, I've just left it like that to show you. So it becomes estaba, I was. Next one then, estabas. And then a little quirk of the imperfect tense is the fact that the first person and the third person are the same. So estaba. So we've got estaba, estabas, estaba. Next one, estábamos, estabais, and then finally estaban. Okay, so they're the endings for these Ar verbs. First example we've got is el camping estaba en la montaña. The campsite was in the mountains. Example number 2, los platos españoles estaban muy ricos. Spanish dishes were very rich or very delicious. Let's move on to the ER and IR verbs then. We're going to use tener as the example one. In this tense it isn't irregular, which is a surprise. So here we go then. First thing, we need to take off the ER. So we've got ten. So in exactly the same way, we've got our stems. Also got our persons of the verb. And next up, just like before, we have to add some endings. Okay, these endings are slightly different. They're exactly the same for the ER and for the IR verbs. So, ten becomes tenía. Next up, tenías. And remember what we said about the first and third persons being exactly the same. Tenía. Next up, we know it's going to have some mos with it. So, teníamos, teníais, tenían. And with regards to pronunciation, very easy because it tells us exactly where to stress, always on the I for this verb. Let's have a look at some examples. El hotel tenía una piscina impresionante. The hotel had an impressive swimming pool. Again, we're describing the swimming pool, that's why we're using tenía. El chico tenía el pelo rubio y los ojos azules. The boy had blonde hair and blue eyes. Again, a description. There are, as ever, some irregular verbs, but not as many as some other tenses. Okay, so there are only 3 irregular verbs in the imperfect. Let's have a look at them. First one is ser. It is the most important verb in the whole of the past tense. To be able to say era, it was. Next up is ir, to go, and we say iba. For example, I used to go. Next one is ber, to see. It's only a slight irregularity, and it keeps that e in like it does in the present tense. So beia, I watched or I was watching. Finally, it's not an irregular, but it's one very worth knowing. In the present tense, when we use I for there is, in the past, when we're describing something, we're going to use abia for there was or there were. So they're the irregulars. With regards to the other endings, they just follow the same pattern. So era will become era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran, iba, ibas, iba, íbamos, ibais, iban, veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. And the same with había on its own. Okay, remember it's only third person and it stays like that. Okay, so thank you very much for listening.